In this video, I'm going to tell you everything that I actually use for audio. Notice that isn't a video of everything I have, because I have many things which I don't use, like this horrible Behringer audio interface here, which I would love to no longer have, but I've been too busy to think of a creative way to get rid of it. So unlike many other studio tours you see on YouTube, mine's not going to be a dick swinging contest with all of the analog outboard which I have but don't actually use. I'm also not going to speak about my guitar and drum gear, because these days I barely touch it. You can see it's full of dust because I just don't touch this stuff nowadays. I'm too busy coding plugins, making YouTube videos, and when I do occasionally get to make some music, I'm going to make electronic music, generally with my Eurorack system you see behind me. So although I use these kinds of tools all the time, we're not going to talk about that because it's not a woodworking channel. Instead, we're going to talk about the kind of tools which I use day in, day out related to my professional work in audio as a mastering engineer, plugin developer, YouTuber, and electronic music artist. Let's start off with the most fundamental piece of studio gear which I use every single day, and that is my studio desk. I can't work that well sitting on the floor, so my desk is pretty much the most fundamental element in my studio. And I've never purchased a studio desk before. I've always built them myself. And you're now looking at the latest desk which I've built. I've just recently finished this just the other day. The desk is fully height adjustable. It goes all the way up to standing height, and I just press a button and it comes back down exactly to the preset which I have set up, the exact height. And so you can change whatever height it goes to. It's got 27 U of rack space, and a few months ago I promised an online course on how to build it, or it's now up on my website. It's live, completely free. So if you want to build a desk exactly like this one, or one inspired by it, the full online course, including all of the plans, is now available on my website, completely free of charge, no hoop jumping required. All you need to do is log in and you can access it immediately for free, apmastering.com. So the next piece of gear that I use is this Pomodoro timer here. So I work for half an hour and I do 10 push-ups or 10 dips. I drink some water and then I continue. So this timer is the second most important piece of gear in my studio, because it's not possible to start work unless I activate my timer, because doing otherwise is demonstrating that you have zero discipline and you're not serious about work. So next up, because we're no longer in the 1970s, almost everything that I do evolves around my computer, and I'm using the Apple Mac Mini M4. It's one of the best price performance computers of all time. I'm currently running Mac OS, but Apple fell off, especially with their liquid arse nonsense. So both in terms of aesthetics and functionality, they're just constantly watering down Mac, catering more to noobs and less to professionals. So I think that Mac at this point is just lagging significantly behind Linux. So in recent times, with the advent of stuff like DHH's Omarchi flavor of Arch Linux, that is a much more compelling operating system than Mac right now. Mac still doesn't have a sensible tiling window manager, and the baby steps that they made in that direction in recent years are more embarrassing than they are useful. But although I do want to transition my main work computer to Omarchi, there's still a few things that don't commonly run on Linux, and I need those things for mastering on my workflow generally. So I'm working on replacing those things this year with my own software. So my daily driver is still Mac for now, but it won't be much longer if Apple doesn't pay serious attention to people like DHH. One guy makes Hyperland, which is a better window manager than the multi-trillion-dollar Apple can come up with. And one guy makes Omarchi, which is a more aesthetic experience than the liquid glass failure that multi-trillion-dollar Apple can come up with. So multi-trillion-dollar Apple need to start taking some pretty serious notes from those single dudes writing better software than them. So next, in order to do anything with my computer at all, I need to interface with it somehow. So I use a Kinesis Advantage 360 mechanical split keyboard as my daily driver, but I'm also starting to use the Digma Defy on my other computer, which I'm going to fully review and compare to this keyboard in maybe even my next video. And spoiler alert, the Digma Defy is really good, just for maybe a slightly different use case to this, but these are both absolutely elite keyboards, but in slightly different ways. On macOS, the experience is still a bit more mouse heavy than on Omarchi, so I need a decent mouse, and I use the Logitech MX Vertical. My one and only pair of headphones which I use for everything headphone related in the studio is the Sennheiser HD 660S version 1. I bought them pretty much the day that they came out, and they're absolutely solid. Before that, I was using the HD 650 and 600, and I've been using the Sennheiser HD 600 series line of headphones for probably over 15 years at this point. They're absolutely phenomenal, and they're my most important reference. I've tried dozens of other headphones, and they're all rubbish compared to the Sennheiser HD 600 series, specifically for accurate professional monitoring. And there's a very small number of other headphones which might do the same kind of thing, such as the Olo X1, for example, but I've never been able to switch away from the Sennheiser HD 600 series because I'm just so used to them, and I just feel at home when I'm monitoring through these headphones. If you're a long-term Sennheiser user, you'll know exactly what I mean. And since I'm also a YouTuber, I need to record some microphones, and sometimes I need to record more than one microphone, and maybe if I'm recording drums, I need to record lots of microphones, so I need a decent audio interface. And for that, I have this here, which I'm currently using. I don't know if you can see the signal there that I'm recording my microphone into this right now, and this is the Focusrite Claret 8 Pre. It's pretty solid interface. I think it's a really nice value for money interface. There's things on the market which are cheaper, like the horrible Behringer interface I showed you at the start of the video, which I don't rate at all. Or there's more expensive stuff. You can spend loads of money on the UAD stuff with all this unnecessary plugin stuff that you don't need. But this is really a sweet spot, one of a few sweet spot priced interfaces. So I've got the Focusrite Claret 8 Pre. And the microphone that I'm currently using is actually a kick drum microphone from Sontronics. And the reason why it's not even intended for vocals or dialogue. It's a kick drum microphone. It's got no pop filter on it, so that's why it's kind of at an angle here, and I'm not speaking directly into it, otherwise it will pop. I dropped, or actually the microphone stand fell over, and it smashed on the floor, and it's not working, and so I haven't had time to fix it yet, but I just grabbed the first thing that I saw, and I like the look at this mic anyway, and was like, it's a really nice looking kick drum microphone. I'm going to use that for my vocal. So there you go. That's why I chose it, because it was next to me when that one broke. I don't have any specific reason for the mic selection beyond that. You can hear my voice through it, and it sounds fine to me. The boom arm is some cheap thing that I got off Amazon, and if I need more than 8 microphones, for example when I'm recording drums, which I'll probably do more of on my channel at some point, I'm using the Audient ASP 880. And in fact, I really like the impedance switches when I'm using dynamic microphones. Now, one of the things about the ASP 880 and some other bits of studio hardware, it doesn't have a power switch on the front panel. So that's why I've got this rack unit at the top, which is just a few power switches with some plug sockets on the back of it. It's not expensive, it doesn't filter, it's just a passive bunch of switches. I don't need to filter my electricity because it's absolutely fine as it comes out the plug socket, and I don't need any golden power cables or any stupid nonsense. If you've got a good quality power supply, it doesn't really make much difference anyway, unless you've got really dirty electricity, and I don't. Now, despite the fact that I've got a whole bunch of gear behind me, none of that is specifically analog mastering gear. I used to have a whole bunch of analog mastering gear, including some things which I actually made myself, but I sold all of that because I came to the conclusion that analog mastering is stupid and digital mastering gets better results. So the analog gear that you see in the rest of the desk here is all Eurorack stuff, which is for making music and not specifically for mastering. Now, I haven't actively released music for a while now, but I have been making music for around 30 years, so we're also going to briefly mention the Eurorack gear, and so that needs to get into the computer on separate tracks. And the more channels I have at my disposal, the better. So that's why I've got the Motu 24 AI right here, because it's got 24 inputs, which is way more than most of the interfaces on the market. You get 8 if you're lucky. Like, for example, the Focusrite one here, the 8 Pre, is great, but it's only got 8 inputs. The Motu 24 AI has got 24, and so I've wired all of those inputs up. Over here, these for multiples, I modified them to be trunk lines, and so I just like cut all the traces on the back and soldered on some snakes, and that connects via D-sub straight into the Motu 24 AI. So Mostly I don't use 24 tracks from my modular system at once. That's a bit much, but sometimes I might use like 17 or 18 tracks in some circumstances, so it's quite luxurious and nice to have 24 at your disposal. Now in terms of my Eurorack system, I'm not going to go through everything because there's quite a few modules, but I'll maybe just mention a few of my favorites. So Maths is one of my favorites, probably my favorite Eurorack module. Maths is just such a great module, and people don't really understand how versatile it is, what you can do with it. The Shapeshifter, absolutely love the Shapeshifter. One of the first modules that I bought, and it's one of the most expensive. So this thing is actually getting a bit ancient now, but there's still not a newer version of that. DPO for Make Noise as well. Absolutely fantastic oscillator. Again, bit expensive, but if you want nice stuff, you have to pay for it sometimes. Now, although I can do a lot with just the Eurorack modules on their own, I actually scaled down my modular setup quite a bit, and I sold a lot of my CV generating modules like voltage block and all of I had a lot of step sequences. I had like Renee and a whole bunch of really cool CV generating stuff. But I kind of just scrapped all of that approach and just sold a whole bunch of my CV modules because of this thing here. This thing is the Squarp Harpax, and this is so powerful. You can do so much with this thing that you don't need all of these CV modules, because you can do a lot of it with this. Like, you don't need loads of LFOs. This can do LFOs. This can even do envelope type stuff. It's crazy how good this thing is, how powerful this thing is. So if you have something like this, you can really scale down the amount of modules you have there. So that's why my modular setup isn't absolutely huge. Some people got absolute walls of Eurorack stuff, but I can get a huge amount of sound coming out of this thing, and I can actually fill up quite a few channels of the Motu 24 AI, because my whole setup isn't bogged down with CV modules, because most of it is happening in this amazing box here, the Squarp Harpax. And yeah, big fan of Squarp stuff. This is the pre-Behringer acquisition of TC Electronic. This is the BMC2 monitor controller, and this was mounted as part of like my Eurorack kind of racks before in my previous desk, but I've returned it to a standalone with its bamboo wooden cheeks, which I made for it, which I like more than the stock plastic cheeks. And this is a fantastic monitor controller because it's a monitor controller with digital in and out and analog out. So it's a DAC monitor controller, really good bit of kit, long been discontinued. There's still a few on the second-hand market. It's really fantastic. It's not got the best headphone amplifier. I've talked about that in previous videos, but it's fantastic as a monitor controller. Now, the only remaining things include this screen, which is a Samsung screen. I've had it for like over 10 years. It's actually broken and mounted upside down because the foot broke off, and I'm doing some weird construction with wood behind there. Small speakers and near field speakers. I made those myself. I've got a course on how to build them. They're cheap as chips. They sound absolutely fantastic. They're my favorite near field reference right now. Behind the desk is the mid-dome version of the three-way speakers that I built, and if you want to know how to build those, you can build the classic three-way versions, the passive versions. I'm actually going to swap these for the passive version probably even later today. They're not even plugged in right now. And I'll be powering those with a pair of Hypex mono blocks, which you can't see. And these are powered by a Fosse Audio ZA3, which is an amplifier that I recommend. Cheaper chip, sounds great. What you can't see is the camera I'm using to record this video, which is a Sony APS-C mirrorless camera, and I've got a TT Artisan 35mm f1.4 manual focus lens, and my lighting is exclusively provided by one single Godox SL60W light, and I've got the Godox octagonal softbox in it. I've also got a second computer, which is my trusty 2015 MacBook Pro, which I've used so much. It's so worn out, like the speakers have blown up, the battery doesn't hold its charge anymore, the keys are so worn down that some of the keys are just completely worn off. You can't see what the keys are. And but it was running super slow under Mac, and then I just completely wiped it and put a Archie Linux on it, and it's super quick again. And if you leave it plugged in, it's absolutely fine. It's got a new breath of life in it with the Archie, and I'm using that with the Digma Defy, this wonderful keyboard here, which I'll do a video on soon. And yeah, I'm just using that for general kind of admin internet stuff when I'm not specifically on this computer. So that concludes a tour of all of the relevant hardware that I actually use day in, day out for my job doing audio-based stuff. But the thing is, hardware is nice, but arguably even more important is the software that I'm using, because all of my money is digital, made from computers. I'm not mowing people's lawns and baking people cakes for cash in hand. I don't do any cash in hand stuff. Everything I earn comes in digitally on PayPal, Stripe, Paddle. It's all on the internet. So I make my money using computers, so software is perhaps arguably even more important than my hardware at the end of the day. Okay, so I'm going to go through the software that I use on a regular basis. Most of it is in my docs, so let's go through it now. I'm not going to talk loads on each one. OmniFocus is one of the only pieces of Mac-only software which I would struggle to move away from, because this is the professional standard for task management. It's essentially a to-do list, but a professional GTD version, which is actually good. And pretty much every other single, I've tried them all and they're all rubbish compared to OmniFocus. Invoice Ninja, this is how I write all of my invoices for my mastering stuff. Apple Music, because the only track that I have in Apple Music is the Round the Fur. I have one single reference track that I use for mastering, and that is it. It might sound ridiculous, but that's the truth. I only use one single reference track to orientate. This is my what I call my calibration track. If you've done my mastering course, this is my calibration track. I listen to this many times a day, and I have this application in my dock to listen to that one single track. Then what have we got next? Reaper. This is my DAW of choice. This is what I use for everything audio based. Everything to do with mastering work, anything I'm mixing, creating my own music, doing any kind of work with audio at all, I use Reaper. Next up, we have QuickTime, which I'm currently using. As you see this icon up here, I'm currently doing a screen recording, and I use QuickTime for that. Although it's buggy and sometimes it randomly just stops halfway through. OBS, this is the software that I use when I'm using my camera. I don't use SD cards and stuff like that. I literally just plug it into my computer with a Blackmagic Ultra Studio recorder HDMI interface box, and I click start recording, and that's how I record my YouTube videos. I literally just click start recording and it records straight into the computer from my camera via HDMI. I don't mess around with SD cards. Then DaVinci Resolve. This is my main video editing, or my only video editing application. I delete everything after I've done it. So currently, this is the thing that I was working on last, my desk course. How to build my desk, and if you want to know how to build that and see that course, it's absolutely free. Just go over to my website apmastering.com and you can see the free course there. So that was the last thing I did. Once it's up on YouTube, I just delete everything. No need to keep any of that. Some people back up every single thing. Once something's published, I don't know why you really need the files anymore. With music, it's a bit different because someone might ask you to remix it or something, and then you need the remix stems, and it'd be silly to delete all of that. At least print the stems, but for video, once a video is up, it's a YouTube video, just delete it. C-Line, I can open this up and show you what that looks like. So this is what C-Line looks like. This is where I write all of my code to make my plugins. This is the code for Versatile Compressor, and you can grab the code for this yourself from my GitHub account, AP Mastering GitHub, and look through it and tweak it and do what you want with it. It's freely available, open source, and so this is where I do all of my coding for C++ stuff such as audio plugins. And so this is really cool. I recommend it, and you don't actually need to buy it if you're not doing commercial work. I have bought a license, but for non-commercial work, you can just download this from JetBrains for free. Next up is Rust Rover and PyCharm and WebStorm, and as you can see, all of these 4 applications have essentially the same logo but with different colors and different letters. That's because they're the same software, but they just are specialized for different languages. C-Line is for C, C++, Rust Rover is for the Rust language, PyCharm is for Python, and WebStorm is more for doing web-based stuff. Then Canva, I keep getting emails from people saying that where are the CAD files and all of that for my speakers and stuff like this. I don't know how to do CAD. I'm not like a technical designer. Literally, when I'm drawing my plans on how to like cut the wood, and when I'm designing stuff, when I design my desk and stuff, I do it all in Canva. So this is Canva. It's like a super basic internet-based graphic design program, and it's really for like graphic design noobs. I used to use GIMP, and I can use Photoshop and that, but I just started using Canva. It's super quick and easy. There's some like really stupid limitations, like for example, you can't make polygons and stuff as far as I'm aware. So this desk shape, for example, is built out of different squares that are just on top of each other. Like it's like really that basic. And like this is how I make all of the interfaces for my plugins, a lot of the graphic design work that I do for my website. Basically anything that is graphic design related, I'm doing it in Canva. Next up is Pro Tools. I'm not going to bother loading it up. Firstly, everyone knows what it looks like, and secondly, it takes 20 minutes. I've got to plug in dongles and all sorts of stuff. I really don't like Pro Tools very much, but because everyone wants me to release AAX versions of my plugins, I need Pro Tools so that I can test stuff. Next up we have Spotify, which I don't actually really use anymore. I can remove that from the dock. Then we have Audio MIDI Setup, which I use every day, all of the time, because this is stuff which is connected to my computer. And with my headphones, for example, I want to get my headphones at minus 26 dB exactly, and I get that by typing in minus 26, and now I'm actually going to that exact level. So it's better than just like randomly using this slider or using the up and down buttons on the keyboard or something. So next up, what do we have? We have the Focusrite control panel. I don't use it that much, to be honest, but I've got the Focusrite interface, so it's there. Room EQ Wizard, I use that sometimes. I've done some YouTube videos where I have displayed charts of measurements that I've taken, either from speakers or from converters that I've measured, and I'm doing that all in Room EQ Wizard. Many people are familiar with this already. It's open source audio software, and you can do sweeps. You can see my voice coming through here on that particular input, and do sweeps and stuff. We're not going to do any sweeps now. If you want to know more about Room EQ Wizard, just download it and give it a go. It's open source. Bitwig I use for testing sometimes, but I don't really use that as my main DAW. Blender I'm using occasionally for the 3D knobs, for example, in my Character plugin. VCV Rack, this is interesting software for doing Eurorack stuff on the computer, and I only use this for demonstration purposes. I've used it on my compression course video, and I used it in a couple of my online courses. Armachi Linux is fantastic. It's already got everything that you need, so you don't really need to install that much more, because it already comes with a bunch of really cool stuff, because DHH has got impeccable taste and has curated some really cool stuff. The only other thing that I use is really Geary and a couple of things, but yeah, it's Armachi is fantastic as it is. So that's pretty much everything that I use software. You've seen everything that I use hardware. Hopefully that was interesting, maybe a bit different from some other studio tours you might see. And if you're interested in building a desk like this, or looking at the plans, maybe you want to look at the plans and tweak it and make something different, or you can just have a look at the course. It's up completely free on my website, apmastering.com.